Perfect. All right, so we'll get this thing started. Obviously, yesterday, Kentucky primary, it was a landslide for Republican and Democrat. You posted that you were, out busy in Washington, D.C. Is that where you join us today? And what were you doing when you watched the elections?
Well, I was actually having dinner with my son and some friends, and we didn't have to wait long. I think the polls closed at 7, and at about 5 minutes after 7, people were telling me that we had won the primary, and we kind of expected to. And we didn't have a lot of campaigning going on in the primary season, but I'm still very conscious of the responsibility I have to folks in Kentucky, to my neighbors in Bowling Green, and to everyone else, and that is to try to conserve what money we have and not to borrow money and put us further into debt. We've got inflation everywhere, gas prices up. What we need to do is quit borrowing so much money so that we don't have to print up the money that is creating this inflation.
And you just mentioned it. My next question was going to be, what are your priorities? I know you're already there. So what can folks expect from you?
Yeah, inflation's the number one problem facing our country. It's really the biggest threat we have right now to our national security is the destruction of our dollar. And this comes from borrowing so much. We borrowed about $6 trillion in the last 2 years. Some people thought it was a good decision to shut the economy down and close everything down during the pandemic. I think it was a terrible idea. And it's also led to these terrible problems. We printed up all this money. The Federal Reserve injected that money into the system, but now it's chasing prices higher. And I saw a statistic the other day that the average American family is $5,200 more in expenses at the grocery store and throughout their economic life because of inflation. And so that's a lot of lost income to people, and many people's wages aren't rising. But the way you cure inflation is quit borrowing so much, quit spending so much, balance your budget.
And I know that that was part of this has also been spending in Ukraine. We saw that this the package that left Washington D.C. was a large amount. Can you touch a little bit on that as well, as far as inflation and helping with here at home?
We don't have any money here to give Ukraine. We have to borrow the money. So the money's borrowed from China. And as soon as it gets here from China, then we ship it to Ukraine. So it really doesn't make economic sense. In addition to that, today or tomorrow, the Democrats are proposing $48 billion in restaurant bailout money. About a month ago, they had bailout money and subsidies given for semiconductor companies. So it adds up to hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars, but we don't have it. It's all being borrowed. Even before we started this borrowing binge, just for the routine expenses of government, we're $1 trillion in the hole. So that's paying for Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, and the military. We're $1 trillion short every year. And that's before all the special spending projects that people wanted to do according to the pandemic bailouts. So we've got a lot of debt and we can't keep doing this. That's what's creating the inflation.
And I know in some of the other races, people have said, let's bring in someone who doesn't have the experience. And particularly for you, you are the incumbent. What would you say to continuing this seat and making sure that the Kentucky people will have someone who already knows what it's like in Washington?
I still feel like the outsider because I'm often in the minority up here when everybody wants to spend money, whether it's Republican or Democrat. I'm one of the few people who says, no, we shouldn't spend money we don't have. So I think that voice of fiscal conservativeness is important, and really both parties need to hear it. Because frankly, when people ask me, whose problem is it that we have such a great debt? Is it the Republicans or the Democrats? And my answer is yes. It's both parties wanting to spend money. The Republicans often want unlimited money for the military. The Democrats want unlimited money for social welfare. And guess what? They do compromise and they raise spending on everything. But that's why we have this inflation. That's why gas is going to cost $5 at the gallon pretty soon in Kentucky if we're not careful. It's because we're spending money we don't have. We need more fiscally conservative people up here.
And I'm not sure if you got a moment to watch Charles Booker's acceptance speech, but in it, he blatantly said that Rand Paul doesn't believe in racism. And I wanted you to give you the opportunity to rebuttal to that, considering that was a blatant statement in last night's speech.
I don't think it's going to be very popular for a candidate who believes in defunding the police, reparations for slavery, and that everything is related to racism. I think we have a good country. I think we have a great state. And I don't meet people with hatred in their heart. I meet most people who are good and loving people that treat people by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. But I think it's going to be very difficult for any candidate to sell this message that we should defund the police. As I travel around Kentucky, I don't find anybody that wants to defund the police other than some of these radical far left, endorsed by the socialist candidates.
And you've already mentioned it, you mentioned it just there. I know that one of the bigger differences here is Booker has a bit of a more progressive leaning. Do you feel like that is wrong for Kentucky?
Well, he's been endorsed by the Democrat Socialists of America, so I'd say that's fairly progressive. But also, I want to defend and honor the police. He wants to defund the police. So I just don't think that's going to be very popular in our state. I'm fiscally conservative, believe in balanced budgets. I believe that life is sacred, comes from God. I think that our rights are from our Creator, and I think those all are worth defending. And I think America is a great country, also worth defending.
And I know your speech, your acceptance speech was just under a minute last night. I wanted to give you this last question, this last opportunity. Anything you'd like to say to the Kentucky voters that put you through, and of course, as you look to the general, the ones you hope will continue to put you through?
Just that it's an honor and a privilege to represent Kentucky every day. I pinch myself and say, what an amazing thing it is to get to represent Kentucky, but to get to stand up for the principles that made our country great, the Constitution, the fact of the Bill of Rights, that these rights come from our Creator, and that really government's instituted among men to try to protect those rights, not to transfer goods from one person to another, but to defend and protect our God-given rights.
Perfect. And the last thing I need from you is we're going to do a gallery view and a picture for our social to say we've got it coming up. So give me 1 second and I will get our picture going. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Perfect. Thank you so much, Senator, for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having
Thanks
me.
to everybody behind the scenes. I know I can't see you, but thanks to everybody.
All right, thanks.
Bye, guys.